everyone. So this is my end of the month reading wrap up for April now. Now we're going into May. I would just say, like, the closer the summer it gets, the more I'm like, ugh. So I'm definitely going to be using this room when I film. I cannot film in my closet. It's like a freaking sauna in there. So the first book I'm going to talk about is DNF. So, I ended up reading Till All the Seas Run Dry. This is The Elements of Pining, book number 2 by Eliza MacArthur. Okay, so her first book that I read from her, Soft Flannel Hank, loved it. Loved that book. Thought it was great. Loved Hank. He was, he's so, like, perfect. The second book she did was more of a historical. I didn't like that as much. I love historicals. Unfortunately, I wasn't a fan of the behavior between the hero and the heroine. Both kind of like had equal parts of annoyance for me. This one here, kind of similar. I will say, kind of similar. Where I don't like the choices of either one of the characters. Things that they did that was just, got on my nerves. And the choice that what happened in the book, because I'm gonna end up spoiling it. I'll just say that I will talk about a spoiler in here because this really just annoyed me. So this one here is basically about the character of what's her name again? Jory. She goes by, her name's Marjorie, but she goes by Jory. He kept calling her Marjorie and she kept correcting him. So years and years and years ago, she, lived with her family in the ocean. She's a Selkie, and so she kind of like has like, I guess kind of like seal skin, things like that. Could swim in the ocean, can be underwater and all that stuff. But she could take human form. When she goes and she takes off her skin, her protective barrier kind of thing, she can become human and look human. So she ends up seeing this man injured on the beach. And so she decides to help him. Like, she's compelled to help him, And so she ends up, like, bringing him kind of back to life. He would have died. And all of a sudden something happens to where he goes off to go fight. He's like a hired hand fighter kind of thing. And he goes off and something happens where something ended up attacking her. And so she ended up waking up and he was gone. And she hadn't seen him in like thousands of years, something like that. I think it was like 1,000 years, something like that. It was a very long time. And he had her, her skin, her silky skin that would help her go into the ocean. So she's been desperate to go into the ocean and see her family because she hasn't seen them in a long time. The only one who she's seen is her father. He'll come up to the surface. Kind of reminds me of like Ariel and King Triton kind of thing, So she's been kind of like, going through the motions, living, and she likes to collect little trinkets. And so that's kind of like her job is she goes and she finds like all these antiques and she has a shop and everything. And in the previous book, she helped her and another character that's in this book helped, what was her name? The heroine in the first book, Soft Flannel Hank. And finally, Jory ends up seeing, was it Callum? I think his name was Callum. I didn't write down names because I just wrote down that I didn't have to. Callum. Callum was his name. She sees him after how many years? And she's, shocked because she thought he was dead, He thought she was dead. Come to find out, he's a vampire. Okay. Now we're up to it. So I said, once I got to the 40% point of the book, I gave up on it and started to skim it until it was over. I basically skimmed the rest of this. That's why I just said DNF, because, you know, if I haven't read the whole book, you know, and I'm just kind of skimming through chapters just to get to the end, I pretty much DNF'd it. That's why I DNF'd this book. I said, if you haven't read Soft Flannel Hank, I definitely would suggest people do that before delving into this book. I said, when I read this author's first book, Soft Flannel Hank, I was pleasantly surprised, and I loved the world building and characters. Unfortunately, her second book, Holdfast, was a bit disappointing for me. There were things in it that I was not a fan of. I was really excited about this one, but unfortunately I had similar things that I had problems with that I had with Holdfast. I said, there were things in this book that I really enjoyed, hence why I highlighted them. There were highlights that I had like at least 9 highlights. There were some things in it that I was like, oh, that's sweet. You know, like his thoughts about her or her thoughts about him, like when they were together, how much he loved her and, you know, would do anything for her. You know, the love that they had for each other in the past was just fantastic. So I love that stuff. But then there were other things that I felt was unnecessary for the plot of the story. I mean, there were extra things in this book that I felt like I hate. These are things that I hate when an author does. When you have secondary characters, they cannot overlap the main couple's storyline. They can't do that. If you are delving into a book and the main couple doesn't have enough time, it really affects the story, you know? So with this here, there was secondary characters, and I almost felt like there was a character in here, I can't remember his name for life of me, but he worked for Callum. He was basically Callum's, like, body bag or something, you know, like blood bag, where Callum would go and drink from this person. I think that's kind of weird. This is where I think it's better to kind of like have a relationship with your food, as in like you go and you have them come to your home, you feed from them, and then they leave. This person here, it's like they're also kind of like his bodyguard kind of thing, or like a person who does stuff for him. And I almost felt like the author wanted to kind of like get them together, you know, as I just, you know, because the guy is obviously gay or bisexual, and, you know, he'd paint his nails and all that stuff. And then there were things that I was like, is she kind of hinting at that maybe like Callum and Hid would kind of get together? I didn't like that. Personally, I didn't like that, because I'm like, Callum's straight. So it's like all of a sudden he's like bi-curious. I was like, that's what I got from it. I was kind of seeing hints of that in the writing. And I was like, I don't know. It just, Callum was like, oh, he's like family. And I'm like, you barely know this fucking guy. This guy's only been working for you for like how many months, and already he's fucking family? I don't think so. That was weird to me. That was weird. And then there was like some other background story with him, with the guy's character, where it's like, well, obviously he's not like quite human, I think. It's obviously going to be like some kind of storyline with that character. And I was kind of like, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. I hate when authors do this. Stop fucking putting extra shit in when it's not necessary for the fucking story. So that I didn't like. And what annoyed me, because I'm like, it's taken away from the main characters, you know? And there was a lot of, when it comes to second chance, it has to be done right. If it's not done right, I get so fucking annoyed when I read it. I'm not always a big fan of second chance. It has to be done right. If it's not, it really annoys me, because it's like, why the fuck are you together in the first place? You know, honestly, why were you together in the first place? You know, there were secrets that they had that they never told each other. Then I said, one of the things, though, that really ticked me off about the hero was the fact that when he turned into a vampire, he went back home where he stayed with Jory, and because his hunger was so great, he drained her of blood. So that's who the person was who attacked her 1,000 fucking years ago, was him. He went and was so vampire crazed, during, because he had gotten turned into a vampire. And he went to her and drained her. If she wasn't a fucking Selkie, which she's immortal, he would have killed her. He would have fucking killed her. If she was human, he would have killed her. I was like, okay, this really pisses me off. This really pisses me off. I found it way too convenient that she survived so her and Callum could have a second chance together. I said, I'm at the point with this author where I will give her one last chance, and if she disappoints me again, then I'm done reading her work. I said, it's unfortunate too, because I really love Soft Flannel Hank. And that's what it is with this author, where it's like 2 books. I'm like 3 strikes, you're out kind of thing. 2 books, not a fan of. Love the first book. And I really don't know where this author went, what happened to your writing where your first book's really good, but the next 2 are, are not very good. There's too much going on in the story where it's like you needed to tighten this up. You needed to tighten it up, edit out shit that don't need to be in there. You can introduce secondary characters or more of a backstory for them toward the end of the fucking book. I felt like you really didn't need all this extra stuff in it, and it took away from the character's love story, especially since this is a second chance. Second chance, you need that buildup of them getting to know each other again and talking with each other, and what were they keeping to themselves, because she didn't tell him that she was a Selkie, that she was immortal. She was going to tell him, and then she got attacked, him, and because he thought he killed her, and I'm like, dude. Yeah, so I got to that point where I was like, fuck this. I'm like, you know what? No. I am not going to continue reading a book where it has a lot of issues for me. And like I said, I almost felt like the author kind of wanted to put the one character with Callum as kind of like almost, a bond between them. And I was like, really? I'm like, okay, yeah, if Callum's bisexual, I don't care. But the fact that it's like, he was straight, straight dude. And they're kind of having it to where it looks like there's some type of like relationship, like even Jory, Jory, even her like had kind of like a little bit of like jealousy of like the relationship between the other dude and Callum. And I was like, this is weird. I was just like, no. So yeah, for me, it's a no. And I think she's going to probably do another book where it's another historical. There were characters in that last book she did for Hardfast that I was very curious about, that I would love to read. And like I said, one more chance with that author. I'm going to give her one more chance. If she fails to impress me with like her next book, I'm done. I only give authors so much rope. And if they decide to hang themselves with it, that's on them, That is on them. I'm only going to give them so much because there's so many other authors out there I could go and give, my time to, So it's like you're going to keep reading an author even though you're not enjoying most of what they write, So it's the same thing with this author here. She's kind of up and down for me, but luckily this one here, 5 stars. I love this one. So this one's Jump on 3, Savage Academy number 3 by Julia Wolf. So we got the characters of Evelyn and Ivan. They were introduced from the previous book, so you have to basically start from the beginning to read this. I mean, you probably could read this as a standalone, but I would say better to at least read the book before that, because then you know the relationship between the sisters a little bit more before you delve into this. So Evelyn is atypical. She's basically has autism. young lady live in a typical world. Her and her twin sister go to Savage Academy, which is a high school for wealthy teens. She tries to go about her day-to-day life as best she can, but Evelyn has certain rituals and quirks she does, and unfortunately it's those quirks that gets her looked at weirdly by other high school girls. One in particular, Layla, fucking hated that bitch. Oh, I wanted to jump through the book, and I wanted to smack a bitch. Oh, I wanted to punch her in the face, because she was so nasty to Evelyn. And it's like, have you no heart? Have you no heart that you're going to go and pick on somebody who was born with autism, who was born autistic? You're going to pick on somebody because they were born that way. What's wrong with you mentally that you have to go and pick on somebody who is atypical, like neurodivergent? They are different. If you're on this frequency, they're on this frequency. They're on a whole different level, So you have to basically teach them how to socialize because they don't know how to do it. They are very awkward people. My youngest is autistic. She's a more high functioning. She has quirks. She has little things that she does. One of the things that she used to do when she was growing up was she would line up her toys. Like she had to have a certain row. They'd have to be a certain way, She does a lot of what they call, like stimming, where, she used to do this a lot, like when she was a baby. She used to go like that, which is like flapping. Now she does this. She claps a lot. She does a lot of clapping. That's her like rituals. And it could be like two things. Like she could be doing it because she's like in pain or something's bothering her, or she does like the clapping when she's excited. So she has two different ways of like how she does her, little quirks. And she has trouble socializing. One of her one of her people that she hangs out with is her sister. Now, next year, for her, when she gets into my oldest getting into middle school, it's going to be transition for my youngest because she won't have her in school anymore. So now she has to have other kids who kind of like be her like little buddy and hang out with her. So she has trouble socializing. And that's one of the things that you always worry about as a parent is your child not being able to socialize and make friends. So with autism, it's very much a lot of worrying. So with Evelyn's definitely more high functioning. I'd say she's more of like on the almost close to Asperger's, kind of like because there used to be like Asperger's, and then they kind of switched the diagnostic to like high functioning autism. But she's definitely high functioning. She has a lot of quirks. She has like different food preferences, which yes, a lot of autistic children have food restrictions where they don't like a lot of things. I would say one of the things I've noticed, at least from two autistic children that I have in my home, one's an adult, but I still kind of consider him a child, even though he's technically an adult. They love chicken nuggets. Like chicken nuggets. I don't know what it is, but a lot of autistic kids love chicken nuggets, So Evelyn very much has a lot of food restrictions where certain foods she doesn't like. She very much loves music. And having her headphones, like that's one of the things I noticed about some other autistic children too. Some of them very much are like the sound gets to them. So I think for her, like having headphones in her ears all the time kind of helps muffle a little bit. Putting music on, she likes, I guess you could say it's probably like dance music. She likes kind of like this dance music, the way like these certain songs are played. She really likes them. And so Ivan, like I said, Layla is a bully, and Layla bullies her. And so she gets Evelyn to do her homework and projects. This pissed me off. This really pissed me off. Layla also loves to call Evelyn Creepelin. Yeah, I really wanted to wring this little bitch's neck. I really, really, really wanted to wring this little bitch's neck because of the fact that it's like you're calling an autistic person creepy. They have quirks. Yeah, they're going to be a little awkward. That's how they are. And you're going to go and be nasty to her and make her do your homework? Do your own homework, bitch. You know, just, oh my God, this chick really pissed me off. So Evelyn enjoys to be by herself a lot, and she also loves to have a particular room in the library where she can study. So she ends up having someone steal her room, and so that's how she thinks of it. Is like someone stole her room, even though it's like, girl, you don't own the room. You know, like there was 3 different rooms, but the other rooms she didn't like. One was I think it was a window or something in the one room, and it would distract her. And so she didn't like going in that room. And then the other room was like too cold, so she didn't like going in that one either. So like the room 3 was like just right for her, where, you know, she can go in there and study and concentrate and do all this stuff. Well, someone keeps stealing that room. And so she gets mad and starts leaving like these notes on the door, like, hey, thief, don't be stealing this room. I use this room between this time and this time. And so, yeah. So she starts leaving notes on the door of the study room. Her and the other person go back and forth with each other until eventually he gives her his phone number and they start texting back and forth. So Evelyn has no idea she's texting Ivan, her sister's ex-crush. Like, her sister had a crush on Ivan. So her sister had a crush on Ivan. And this is why Evelyn really doesn't want to, pursue him, because her sister liked him. And so she's like, I'm devoted to my sister. I don't want to go and, date him, knowing that my sister, had a crush on him. And even, her sister's like, don't worry about it. She's like, I don't have a crush on him anymore. So Ivan is a high school student who is friends with Evelyn's sister, but he's had a crush on Evelyn and has watched her for some time now. And when he gets a chance to have more time with her, he absolutely loves it, because he never thought he'd have a chance with hanging out with her and talking more than a few words with her. Ivan absolutely adored Evelyn and would do anything for her. So I said I loved how hung up he was for her, where Evelyn would have these constant doubts that Ivan wouldn't continue to see her anymore. And that was the running thing with her, is because she's been picked on for years, her own fucking family. Her own family! When you have a child that's diagnosed with something, some kind of learning disability, whether autism or some other thing, you have a child that's born with Down syndrome, anything like that. They can't help that they were born that way. They can't help they were born that way. So the fact that her family were these rich assholes that really didn't want anything to do with her, they didn't really want to be around their kids. And it's like, why even have kids if you don't want to be around them? What's the fucking point, And so they very much didn't really want to associate with their kids all that much, maybe holidays or something like that, The brother was a complete jackass, so I really could not stand the brother in the last book. Thankfully, he wasn't really around much in this one. So for me, it's like, as someone who, when you write a book that has autism representation in it, I obviously want to look that if it looks right. With autism, there's very much there's a lot of similar traits that autistic kids have, but also there's some traits that are kind of different too. That's why it's on a spectrum, There's so many different traits that autistic kids could have that sometimes are a little bit different. Where, for instance, my youngest daughter, her autism is slightly different than my stepson's. My stepson's autism is a bit different. He has more of a, his mentality is more of like a 12-year-old, you know? So he very much is like into like different things, and he doesn't have like the mentality of a, say, 22-year-old, you know? And that's pretty much his age right now. So he very much is like, he's not into girls. He's not into like, you know, wanting to date, anything like that. He would be embarrassed and just would go and go hide in his room. He basically like stays in his room all the time. He loves to stay in his room. He loves to write little lists. He has lists that he does of like, you know, he loves the military and all that stuff. So he writes like lists of like tanks, you know, how many tanks are in this military, how many things are in this, and then he wants to talk incessantly to me about like, you know, the military stuff, and I'm just like, dude, it's like over my head. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's awesome, but I'm just like, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not into military stuff, so it's kind of like, you know, over my head. So he has these little quirks that he does, but one thing is like, he's not a very big fan of like sound. He does this a lot, you know, he'll cover his ears, stuff like that. So I always look for good representation in books. Like if you do it wrong, it's not good. So for me, I did feel like, you know, Julia Wolf did a good amount of research, you know, when it comes to autism, because like I said, it's you know, some autistic kids, I'm like, I look at different traits that they do, and I'm like, oh wow, that's a little different than what, you know, like say my daughter does, you know, my stepson does, things like that. But one thing they do have in common: food restrictions. They are so picky. Like the majority of what my daughter eats is chicken nuggets, pizza. She loves orange chicken from Panda Express, you know, like sometimes I can get her to eat. There's this company that Costco will sell this one orange chicken that's like frozen. And so I'll go and I'll heat it up in the oven. She'll eat that. I try to introduce her to new foods, and whenever it's like something new, you know, like whenever it's something new and she likes it, and I'm like, thank you, because she is so big. She will not eat a vegetable. You put a vegetable in front of her, she will sit there for hours and she'll not eat it. She will not eat it. So sometimes like I have to like, okay, can I disguise this vegetable, you know, so that way she eats it, you know, like sometimes you can go and like blend up vegetables and kind of mix it in with like a sauce, and sometimes the kids don't notice that, but some of the autistic kids, it's like they notice the smallest little things. Like if there's like a little spice in there and she notices there's little flecks of something, she'll pick at the flecks and she won't continue to eat the food, you know. And I'm like, girl, I'm like, help mommy out, please. You know, she's so picky. She's so picky. So with this here, it's like there were quirks that Evelyn had, and there was a thing in here. I loved how protective Ivan was of her. I love that. I just love that. He was devoted to her. He was so into her, you know, and like the things that she did, and he loved all of her little quirks, which is like, thank you. You know, you want somebody to be okay with somebody's quirks, the things that they do, their little rituals that they do. You want somebody to be okay with that, you know, because that little bitch, Layla, you know, there was a scene where Evelyn was up on top of because she swims, her and Ivan swim, and she was on top of this, you know, the diving things, you know, for the swimming. I mean, honestly, I'm not like bad on heights, but when you look down, diving for swimming, fuck no. You know, like, those high rise jumping boards, fuck no. Hell to the no. No. Nope. Will not do that ever. that scares the shit out of me. The bravery of people who go off those high ones, that there is just like, oh my God. So she was up there and that little bitch pushed her off. Oh, I wanted to throw hands. I wanted to throw fucking hands on this, oh, that really pissed me off. And so Ivan had jumped in to like, help her out. He was so mad. He was so fucking mad. He was so mad at that little bitch. And so I was kind of glad like what happened with Layla got her kind of just desserts. I will just say that. Because Ivan, pretty much like took care of it. And I was like, you go, boy. But there were other things like he was doing like working with his dad, and his dad's a fucking asshole. And so she would follow him, to see what he was up to. Like he was doing like some secret stuff. And so she would follow him into the city. And she went and hired like this lady to like basically Uber driver to drive her. And the lady was like really nice. So I thought it was really sweet because she was like, oh, okay, honey, we're going to go and we're going to, scope out what's going on. So I thought it was really cute. I love that one. It was such a good book. I enjoyed it. And like, that's the Julia Wolf I like, where it's like so sweet. He was so like, I was so devoted to her. And I was just like, that's what I want to see. That's what I want to see. So, okay, the next book I ended up reading was called Good Deeds by Catherine Moon. I do like Catherine Moon, but it's kind of like up and down for me. It depends on what it is. Because when I read, what was it called again? The Lady of Wooksgrave? What was it called again? What's it called again? The Lady of Rooksgrave Manor. That's what it is. The Lady of Wooksgrave. God, I can't say it. Wooksgrave Manor. That one was a reverse harem, or now they call it wide shoes, because I guess reverse harem is like bad to say. I don't know. So this one is like another like wide shoes, but this one's with androids, and I was like, okay, it was different, but I did enjoy it. I did enjoy this. I gave it 4. So, and the characters are Nashka, that was the female, Kino, Gloss, Romeo, and Avon 8, and Kev 1. So she's a Dendaris. It's some type of like creature. I just kind of thought of her as like human, but obviously she had like purplish skin. I think she had like a purplish tone to her, and so she went into this type of heat and only really like, was it Dendaris like mate with other Dendaris, and she doesn't want to mate with another Dendaris. She doesn't want to settle down. She loves traveling in her spaceship, to different areas, doing different jobs. She loves doing that. So she really doesn't want to have to settle down. So she goes into this heat, but like I said, she doesn't want to find another Dendaris to mate with. So she manages to find a home that an android named Avon 8 runs, and he has other androids service other women who pay. So they're basically like escorts, they're like sex bots. And so Avon 8 agrees to service her in exchange that she repair his arm, because his arm is off, and they're kind of like older models when it comes to like androids. They obviously could be decommissioned, but she doesn't want that to happen to them. So she decides to fix his arm, and then he services her. And so he tells her, there's other things in the, house that need to be fixed. We'll let you stay here for as long as you need. And so he continues to service her. And then she ends up getting serviced by the other men, the other androids, in the household. And so I said, I enjoyed the story. I don't really care for White Shoes slash Reverse Harem, but Catherine Moon writes these books in a way where I actually do enjoy them. I loved how all of the androids had their own little personalities and how all of them could please her in different ways. I said how all of the androids ended up falling for Nachka. And I said how protective and affectionate they were to her and for her to reciprocate their feelings. I will say that the ones I enjoyed Nachka with the most were Romeo. Oh my God. He was just so sweet. So sweet to her. It was like, he's one of those models where it's like, as soon as those androids where as soon as he sees the females, he starts to fall in love with them. It's like he's a love android. And so he starts to fall for them, and he feels like he has like where he kind of feels feelings and all that stuff. And he's like a higher model, like one of the newer models and stuff. Same thing with like, there was another one that was Gloss. Gloss very much was one of those ones where he could feel the feelings, in the pleasure of the other women. He could feel it too. But I really loved how devoted Romeo was to her. He was so sweet, so devoted to her, just would do anything for her. And I was just like, oh, that's so cute, like he was such a cinnamon roll, And Kino was definitely like a little more wild, but he was just so like I loved his humor with her, and he would tease her, but it was like in a nice way, like a funny teasing. And he had like different things that he liked to do. And I liked Avon 8 because he very much was like very serious. He kind of ran the whole thing, but you could see like how much like he like reprogrammed like his feelings and different things like that, like different like emotions and all that stuff. He was like reprogramming himself so that way he can start to have like different facial features that he could do and stuff like that, more smiling, different things like that. It was really interesting because she was very skilled when it came to like fixing things and all that stuff. And I like seeing women who are more like in roles like that where they could do mechanics, they could do different things like that, because it's very much like a male dominated field. So I like to see women who know how to put things together. That really is just, I love that. I like putting things together, like when it comes to like, I have a thing over here that I got for my daughters that will hold books and different things like that. So I put that together. Of course, it's kind of like an IKEA thing, so it's not that hard to put together, but still, like, I like putting things together. I like more of looking at like, how you stain wood and all that stuff. All that stuff is very creative for me, so I really love all that type of stuff because I like being creative. So if I watch anybody like build a desk or a table or a chair or whatever it is, it's very fascinating for me to watch it, and I'm like, oh, teach me how to do it, because I like all that stuff. That's something that attracts me, is seeing people like build things or put things together, or back together type of thing. So I loved how she was very skilled when it came to like her putting things together, her fixing them and helping them. And in exchange, they helped her with her heat and all that stuff, because she would go into like this heat. And then there was also like other Dendiris that were on this planet that were kind of like going after her and like calling her like different, like try to like calling her different names to kind of get them to come to her so they can, do it with her. And she didn't want to go to them, because then she's kind of like mated to them and she doesn't want to be mated. So at least here it's like she chose the men, she chose the androids to be with, and they all pretty much like loved her, so it was really sweet. I really enjoyed myself. It was something different, sex android. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed myself with that one. So that's why I end up giving that one a 4. So the next one I read was Threads of Fate. This one here was a little bit kind of like, one of those things where it was very hard to like suspend my reality with this one. I'll just say that. It was very hard to suspend my reality. So I ended up giving it like a 3 on Goodreads. It's basically like a 3.5. I gave it like a 3.5. So it's Threads of Fate by Lexi Esme. So the characters are Seftis and Rianne. So Rianne accepts a ride home from her boss, Gary. And the dude turns out to be a creepy stalker and has been in love with, Rianne for years. He also was spying on her when she was at home, so he's a fucking creeper. Gary attempts to sexually assault her and then they end up driving off the road. And so she runs and he chases after her. They fall into a pit. Gary is killed by this humanoid spider named Seftis. These names, man, I swear. He lets her go, and once she heads home, she thinks of Seftis and says his name, and she manages to summon him. So once he literally lands in her place, he tells her that she is his wife and mated partner, because she was able to summon him. He came through the, her calling his name, that means that she's his partner, and she's his mate. I said it was different, but I felt like it was more a 3.5 because I had a hard time suspending my reality. So too many things in this book made it hard to be believed. So the things with this is that, definitely has that fantasy element to it, a lot of fantasy element to it, because he's kind of like this spider creature where it's like the bottom part of it is like he's like a spider, but the upper part of him is kind of like almost humanoid and things like that. He's very pale and has like this flowing hair, and like I said, it was very weird because he could transform himself into looking human. And I'm like, that's a little too convenient. I was like, that's a little too convenient for me. Where it's like, okay, so he can go out into society and look human. But, when they're at home, he can be like a spider humanoid kind of thing. And it's okay, And I was like, okay. And they kind of fell for each other like a little too quickly. It was a little too insta-lust. And even though I enjoyed the story, I did enjoy the story, it was a little bit where I'm like, this is hard, this is like outside, like hard to suspend my reality with it, And that's why I was like, it's okay. Like I do enjoy it, but it wouldn't be something I would read again. And yeah, it was like a little bit too like convenient of like he's able to transform himself. Oh, and like the whole like Gary disappearing, it's like he's able to like switch up things to where it's like Gary doesn't, Gary's gone. He was able to make it look like Gary ran off, and I was just like, really? This is a little too convenient. Her car ends up back at her place, even though she drove Gary's car back, from being out in the woods and stuff like that. And then she got her car back, and I was like, so he could do that too. That's weird, like that's just so weird. I'm like, that's just so weird, man. And I'm like, it was a little too like easy. And I was like, I'm like, so he could do this too. Like, is he a fucking magician? I was like, okay, sure. But yeah, it was 3.5. I did enjoy it, but I was like, that's a little too far-fetched. So I ended up reading the next book. This was very quick. This was like quick novella. So this was Cleo Evans' Little Slice of Hell. This is Creature Cafe book number 1. I will definitely read other books from this author when it comes to the Creature Cafe, because they're very short stories. So I gave this a 4. So we have Dante and Peter. So it's a monster and human sexy fun times. And that's what this book was sexy fun times. Definitely was more of a on the erotic side than a romance. So Dante, he's an incubus. He gets a matchmaking supernatural barista to mate him to someone that he could be with forever. He wants a mate for all time. So Peter is a human, and he wants to be matched with a monster. Peter has sexual trauma in his past from a previous supernatural. So as soon as Dante and Peter meet, they have an instant attraction and insta lust. This was definitely more banging and less plot built up of the characters, but it's a novella, so it was okay. I was okay with the pace of the storyline. So there is content warning for this. It's a BDSM relationship. There's talk of sexual assault in a past relationship, and there's also a death in here. So Dante is like this big, imposing incubus, where obviously he can get people to get turned on and all that stuff. He has like these little things that he likes to do in the bedroom. He likes to control. And Peter very much is more submissive and likes to, you know, submit to his partner. And so Dante finds out that Peter had gotten sexually assaulted years ago by a vampire. And the vampire almost killed him. So when Dante finds this out, he is pissed. He is so mad because he wants to protect Peter. You know, like he has this instant attraction to him. You know, they end up meeting like at this, you know, the barista coffee shop. And they very much like right off the bat, like, you know, want to bang it out because they're very much attracted to each other. And so it was very insta lust, like falling for each other like super quick. Peter, of course, had his he was reluctant because of his past trauma. And I really loved how protective Dante was of Peter and how much he wanted to fucking destroy that vampire. You know, like he was like, tell me his name, you know, like tell me his name. I'm going to fucking destroy him. So he was like, oh no, he's dead. And then something happened where he's like, you know, not quite. And so that was pretty much like the story. It was very quick, very cute. And I definitely would read more from that author. She was like, I first was introduced to that author from that other like monster anthology that I read, where I was like, I really liked it because it had very much that 80s feel to it. Love the cover of that, like, you know, monster anthology. And so I was introduced to Cleo Evans from that. So I'm like, I definitely would read more from the author when it comes to all of the little coffee shop novellas that are in that series. There's like how many of them? I definitely would read more of those. And then also there's another one I think I downloaded from the author. I think it's a little bit longer. So I'm going to read more from the author. I do like their writing. So I definitely will read more of those books. And yeah, they're definitely more of like, if you're looking for like a smutty good time, you're definitely going to be enjoying those books. So it is a smutty good time. So the last book I read this month, and there's a couple other books I read, but I did a vlog for them, and you're going to see the vlog. You'll see the vlog in May. Because, you know, and I don't, you know, I'll just say I don't want to talk about those right now. So the last book I read was Only the Clonely by Ruby Dixon. Now, Ruby definitely is up and down with me. I'd say, like, I really loved her Ice Planet Barbarian series. I really loved the Ice Home series. I really loved the beginnings of the Rizdaverse. Now she's kind of like stretching out the Rizdaverse. You know, like I kind of feel like she jumped the shark when it comes to these series. Like she's trying to stretch it out even more. And it's like, girl, just come up with a new fucking series, you know? This one here is called the Sunrise Cantina series. So it's basically they're clones. And they wanted to open up their own business. They're all a part of, like, if you read the book Strake, that was a part of the what was it called again? Corsairs, I think it is the Corsairs series. There's Strake. That's a thicker book. That's a thick one. That's part of like her serials. Where I actually like that one. So he was Lord Strake. Was it Lorin, something like that? And he ends up getting together with Ruth. Ruth, you find out, is a clone. And so she finds other clones of her. So you got Ruth, Ruthie, and Ruthann. have that get confused. So Ruth Ann, definitely, she's a lesbian. She don't like dudes. Ruth is married now to Lord Strake, and now you have Ruthie. Ruthie is a big ball of anxiety. So, this one here, so we have Ruthie and Kazix. Kazix is was it Anani? Something like that? Anani, he's red-skinned. I said in a previous video that the clones had red skin. Those are legal clones. The legal clones have red skin. The illegal clones look like you and I, where their skin tone is the same skin tone as the ones they got cloned from. Those are illegal clones. So Ruthie, and Ruth Ann are all illegal clones. So they all got pretty much rescued. Otherwise, they would have been destroyed. They got rescued, and they got, the two, or let's say the three, were on the ship, Lord Strake's ship. And so they decide to dock at Rizda 3. And while they're there, they kind of like visit the local, town and everything. And the one guy who's one of the clones there, he decides he wants to open up a cantina and have like a bar. And so all the other ones are like, yeah, that'd be cool. Let's do this. And so they start to like, they buy the cantina, they start fixing it up. And Ruthie is very much like, when she found out, she got rescued, so she very much had like this fear of like being recaptured. So, the anxiety of like, she doesn't want to be left alone. So Kazix has like been in love with her since he met her. Like, it was an insta love for him. As soon as he met her, he was like, this is who I want to be with. And so he's been very protective of her for like months, like, months and months. They've known each other, like at least 6 months they've known each other. And so he's very protective of her. He sleeps like outside her room, right near her door, so she feels protected. So he's very much her protector, and she lives in this constant fear of like, being taken or being like harassed or threatened or anything like that. She's constantly living in fear. And so I'm like, I have anxiety, but it's like, my anxiety is very much like, it's fear-based of my children. I have this constant fear of like wanting to protect my children constantly, making sure that, no one's going to hurt them. Otherwise, Mama Bear is fucking coming out and destroying them, So I'm very protective of my daughters and, things that they get up to, when it comes to playing games online and all kinds of stuff. So I try to be leery about what they get into. And so for her, she very much has this like constant like overthinking and everything, which I will say, like, my brain, when it comes to anxiety, it's like a fucking clown show up here. I'm constantly like, it's always in my head. Always in my head. Shit's always running. So for me, I constantly have that where I'm constantly thinking of like all this stuff. For her, it's like very much fear-based. And so of like, and then she's like, can't make decisions. She's very indecisive. And so with him, it's like, he kind of had to take a little bit control of like, hey, let's do this. Do you want to do this? We're going to do this, right? Do you want to do this? And he's kind of doing it in a way to where she's feeling comfortable, but also he's kind of pushing her forward as like exposure therapy, That's what I pretty much have to do when it comes to anxiety, is you have to have to face your fears like head on in order to kind of like get through that anxiety, So like for me, one of my things is like, I don't like my kids when they go to school. I always have that fear in the back of my head. we know what happens to a school. Some schools end up getting targeted for bad things. I will just say that. I have that fear of that. I have the fear of, like, you know, my children being taught things in school that they shouldn't be taught, you know, very much have that fear. A teacher taking advantage. I mean, there's all kinds of things that pop in my head that I think about, that I'm like, it could happen, you know. I don't live in this fucking world where it's like everything's sunshine and rainbows. No, I know the world is a dangerous place, and I constantly have that in the back of my head. So I constantly live in this fight or flight, you know, response. So when they're home, that's when I'm the most calm, you know, because they're home. I can see them, I can hear them. When they're away from me, you know. So I've had to learn to, you know, get through certain things of, like, dropping my children off without bawling my eyes out. Having my eldest go on field trips and not have that constant fear. So I've had to kind of get through different things. So it was the same thing with Ruthie in here, where, you know, she obviously loved Kazakhs. She obviously loved him, obviously wanted to be with him, but she had that constant fear of, like, well, what if he leaves? What if we can't be together? All this other stuff. It can get annoying. I will say, as a reader, you can get very annoyed with Ruthie because of her constant shit in her head. She's constantly overthinking. So I could see, like, some people getting annoyed with her because of this, because of her constant, you know. But the one thing I did like is that eventually in here, because it was very slow for them, once she kind of let him know that she was interested in him, because he very, very much told her, like, I love you. You know, I love you. I want to be with you. Take your time. I will wait for you. And so when she finally kind of, like, told him, like, you know, I want to be with you, it was very slow. So there was a lot of foreplay with this. A lot of foreplay. They didn't go and do the dirty until, like, 90% into the book. So there's that. But he very much was, like, devoted to her, wanted to protect her. And the one thing I did like in here is that Ruby Dixon had Ruthie go do exposure therapy, where she's like, I need to go and be by myself for, like, a week and learn to get over this fear of being by myself. And so I very much appreciated that she at least did that in the book. And I was like, thank you. Because that's what we need. You know, when you have anxiety, you need to get through that anxiety with exposure therapy. Like, for me, I do not like crowds. You know, I don't like crowds. I don't like concerts. But sometimes I have to, like, push myself to expose myself to those types of things, you know, so I can kind of, like, you know, get over the hatred of, like, you know, people. So, you know, people next to me, people who smell, people who are, like, sweaty and they're, like, right up on me, and I'm like, get the fuck back off, you know. I'm like, yeah, I very much do not want to be at a concert where I'm by myself. I will just say that. I'd rather have my husband with me or another male who I can trust, because I ain't getting groped. I ain't getting fucking groped or someone touching me. They're going to get punched in the fucking face. So, for their own safety and mine, you know, because I'll break my fucking hand. Yeah, it's better that I have someone with me than me by myself. So, yeah. So, yeah, I'm very much, like, not into crowds, especially drunk idiot crowds. You know, when it comes to concerts, there's some drunk assholes, you know, in the crowd, and I don't want to deal with that. I very much do not like to deal with drunks, just based on my experience with my ex. So I don't want to deal with it. And so with that, with her, I really liked how Ruby Dixon gave Ruthie that exposure therapy, because she really needed to be on her own for a week and learn to like trust her own instincts and to trust that she's not going to get taken. She's not going to get kidnapped. She's not going to get harassed, you know, anything like that. She's not going to have that, you know. The town is safe, you know, it's a very, very safe little town because you have like the guys who work at like, you know, basically like a sheriff's office and all that stuff. They look over the women, make sure that there's not men taking advantage and things like that. It's a very safe area. So it was very much a refuge for these women who were kidnapped, taken, sold into like alien slavery and all that stuff, you know. This place is very much a refuge for them. So Ruthie very much needed that. She needed that refuge. And another thing with her is like, she thought of her clones as like, it's her sisters, you know? So she didn't want to leave them. So I liked also Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann and Ruth, with Ruthie, were very much kind of like pushing Ruthie. Like, you know, no, you need to like, you know, you need to do this, you know, you need to like do this for yourself, you know. They very much were like her cheerleaders and were kind of pushing her like, no, you need to go and do this, you know, go and do this for yourself, you know, don't worry about us, you know, we're fine. So I really liked that one. I thought it was pretty good and I ended up giving it a 4. There was a lot of highlights to it that I thought were, you know, I thought were good. And so, yeah, that was it for this month. I do, like I said, I have a vlog that's coming out. So like that there took me like damn near a month to do because I just wasn't feeling the book at the time. So I put it down for a little bit and then I had to take it back up again. But that vlog will be coming out in May. So you'll see that soon. But I'm going to try to read some more other stuff this month. Right now I'm reading it's like a fantasy. It's like a romance fantasy where it's like a creature that's kind of like a mermaid, like a male mermaid. It's interesting so far. So I'll talk about that next month. But that's pretty much it for this video here. I'd say I had a pretty good month, you know, pretty good month. I mean, there was that one book there I was like, eh. But otherwise, I thought you know, I made some good choices. I'll just say that. I think I made some good choices this month. So that's pretty much it for this video here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves, be kind to each other, and I will see you all on the next video. All right, bye.